For those of you who have not been part of the Lunchtime Conversations before, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department with this city does these on a monthly basis to highlight opportunities and ways to help everyone in our community feel welcome. So I politely asked if we could have a lunchtime conversation talking about those of us in the LGBTQIA+ community, not to highlight the differences, not to bring in all of the things that separate us, but to remind everyone what a welcoming city this is, what a great place to live, and to highlight the things that we have achieved. I want to take the time to thank Pascal Eze and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, the Mayor's Office for allowing us to have these conversations, but most of all of you. Now, there may not necessarily be the largest group, but to be fair, this is about the same size as we normally get, so I'm pretty happy with that. Right? But I thank all of you for coming out here, because what you're doing is setting an example for everyone else in the city, that we can have differences of opinion, that we can agree to disagree, but we are one community. We are Westland. We are different, but we're the same. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the mayor now to give just a few opening remarks, but I'll be back in just a second. But Mayor, thank you.
Well, hey, good morning, everybody. It's still morning, right? I want to thank our DEI department, Derek, Ellen, and Christina. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and your thoughts. This is our first time doing this kind of program for Pride Month. We are a community that values everyone from all walks of life. We are a compassionate city. We're a city that loves and cares about people no matter who you are, who you love, and how you choose to live your life. So as mayor, it's just my honor to be able to kick this off. I want to thank Nicole and the team over in the DEI department. Mr. Easy, thank you for helping getting this together. He's not here today. He's at a funeral. But also want to thank our city council for their participation as well. Council President Mike McDermott, Council President Pro Tem Melissa Sampe are here. We really appreciate that and all this. Councilwoman Bauman, where are you? Oh, there you are. Sorry, I see you over there. And then our city staff as well. But this is just going to be a really nice program. Thanks again for everybody who's participating, and we really appreciate you.
Well, I think before we get fully started, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance by a dear friend of mine, Miss Ruby Richards. Appreciate all of you symbolizing the flag that's up there. So the theme for today is common grounds. And you may think to yourself, shouldn't it just be common ground, not common grounds? And honestly, I thought the same thing. And then I asked Mr. Eze why we were calling it common grounds. And he told me because we are all on different ground. Each of us plant our flag in our own little space. That's my area. This is my flag. This is my ground. But it becomes common ground when I choose to take my flag and your flag and plant them together. I'm not taking your flag, you're not taking my flag, we bring them in together. And that becomes common grounds. Because we only find commonality when we choose to be together. We can read about things, we can talk to our friends about ideas, but you don't begin to embrace those ideas and change those ideas until you sit with someone and see them for who they are. I'm a gay man, sure, absolutely, out and proud of it. But that is one singular adjective to me as a whole. I am in my mid-40s. I struggle with the fact of, I'm not going to live forever. I've been married for nearly 22 years. I deal with the same marital strifes that everyone else deals with. And you know, in the fall, we also entertained discussions about the merit of curbside leaf pickup. No different. So Today, I have speakers that are here to talk about the things that they have achieved. We're going to have discussions and ask questions, not because of their part of this community, but the things that they have achieved. It's just one adjective. You know, we come together, we work as a community to help all of us. You look around, look to your left, look to your right. Do you know what you see? Allies. But not just an ally for me, an ally for you. Because together, we ally for each other because we are a community. You know, a professor once told me years ago that you can agree to disagree, but you never want to watch your neighbor's house burn down. And that is what we need to remember. That I can agree to disagree. I can agree to disagree with the way that someone handles everything. And I can choose to stand my own flag and stand my ground when I feel like someone is not treating me the way, or others the way that I feel that they need to be treated. But I don't want their house to burn down. This city is our house. This is my home. I live here. You live here. We don't want the city to burn. We want it to flourish, but we cannot do that without common grounds. Okay? Are we with me on this? All right. So I think at this moment I'm going to introduce Councilwoman Pro Tem Melissa Sampe up here to read the proclamation that was recently passed at the City Council meeting.
Thank you. I don't know if I really can top Derek. Give him a round of applause. I mean, he really has so much energy. Raise your hand if you have some garlic breath right now. Okay, so common ground, exactly. We all have garlic breath. For the rest of the, I'm just joking. Well, as we gather here, I'm reminded of the power of love and kindness. Regardless of our differences, as Derek mentioned, we're all human beings and we all deserve respect and acceptance. One of the things that I had brought up in June, at the June meeting, was support and honor and bring forward a resolution for LGBTQ+ Pride Month in the City of Westland. It was really important for me because as we look at Westland, as mentioned, we're all different. You know, we have our neighbors that we get along with, maybe we don't get along with them, but irregardless, we all live in Westland. And we all, I always mention this, we all should treat each other with kindness and with love, because that is what makes the world go round. So I'm going to read the resolution that was passed at the City Council meeting. Whereas the City of Westland cherishes the value and dignity of each person and appreciates the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas all of us are welcome in the City of Westland to live, work, play, and every family in any shape deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, supported by friends and neighbors. And whereas the City of Westland denounces prejudice and unfair discrimination based on age, gender identity, gender expression, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical attributes as front to our fundamental principles. And whereas Pride Month began in June of 1969 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City after LGBTQ+ and allied friends rose up and fought against the constant police harassment and the discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas the City of Westland appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, plus, and then in parentheses, LGBTQ+ community, which strengthens our social welfare, and yes, they do. Whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. And whereas despite being marginalized, LGBTQ+ people continue to celebrate authenticity, acceptance, and love. Now, therefore, have it be resolved that the members of the Westland City Council declare the month of June 2024 as LGBTQ Pride Month in the City of Westland, and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by the members of the LGBTQ+ community and to actively promote the principles of equality, liberty, and justice. And that is what was read. I kind of get emotional, but I want to thank my colleagues as I brought that forward to pass that night. So that was at our June 3rd meeting, and it was really important that we brought that forward. Myself and Council President felt very, very passionate that, we have our colleagues support that. So as we honor 3 amazing leaders to join our panel today, we're going to be led in a panel discussion. So I'm going to introduce to you Christina Ware and Ellen Patnaude. It says I have to read the bio. Do you want to read it, Derek, or you want me to read them? I will let you. This is your show, and you are the leader. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Let us spread love and kindness and enjoy the event.
Yes, thank you. I feel like I don't necessarily need a mic, which is like the blessing, I guess, right? So, I was going through reading about both Christina and Ellen, and I was just enthralled by both of them. The work that they have accomplished, the things that they have done, while not ever once losing sight of their identity is, admirable isn't even the right word. I think rather than me explain how great they are, I want to give them an opportunity to have their own moment to share with us and with me the things that they have accomplished. And while we're talking about this, I encourage all of you to think about these questions, because we're going to then come to you, and it's an opportunity for them to expound on the things that have achieved that they've managed to achieve. Are we fine with this?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Oh.
Ooh, look at that.
That mic is hot.
Yeah. So let's start with that, with you, Christina. Obviously, you come from, work with tech systems,
Yep.
and I could go on and on. Honestly, her bio is about an essay. But tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, afternoon. So grateful to be here. Thank you to the mayor, to the council president, councilwoman, and Derek. I really appreciate you all for allowing us to be here today. My name is Christina Ware. I go by Chris. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a lesbian African-American woman, and I am at Tech Systems. I've been with the organization for almost 14 years. I'm actually an engineer by trade. I graduated from Ferris State University, and when I came out in I graduated in 2010, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do with my career, and I love people, and it's so funny. As a kid, my uncle always said, "You're gonna be in sales, you're gonna be in business," and I said, "Nah, I don't know about that. I like engineering, I like building things." So I had my whole childhood was designing cars and looking up to my dad and other people in my family, and I said, I'm gonna work for GM, and that's what I'm gonna do. Well, it was a downturn in the economy, as you know, and so I stumbled into staffing. So I've been in staffing for, like I said, almost 14 years. But what I was able to do was take some of my skills and transfer those skills from engineering, automotive engineering, to recruiting engineers. So that's what I did. I recruited engineers for GM, Ford, and Chrysler for the first few years in my career. It was a lot of fun. Ended up getting promoted to a position where it's an account management role, but it is sales. sales, but it's workforce development is how I looked at it, right? One thing I'm going to say is diversity, equity, inclusion has been to the, something so near and dear to my heart, almost to the core of who I am as a person, just as, growing up. And so I'm going to tell you why that's important in a second. When I got promoted to my next role, supporting the automotive industry, it was mainly just General Motors, and it was working with plants in the southeastern Michigan. And so I had a meeting. One of the first things I had in my role was I had a meeting with a couple of the plant managers at these different facilities. And they talked about some of the struggles and some of the things that, they were, wanting to work on from, just all types of things from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint. You had people that were retiring, where they're gonna get the young talent from the skilled trade sector, and they just wanted to get different individuals, not just from the state of Michigan, from all over. So, our thing is, hey, we're always gonna present you with the best qualified candidate, but we're gonna be intentional as well to figure out, okay, how can we help mix it up a little bit? And so that was really my first thing, and we grew those plants, and we got some good talent in there, and that's what we did, right? And so we made that a really successful, how do I want to say it? It was really successful in those plants, right? So I'm going to hurry up here. As I move through it, I now am a government solutions executive at Tech Systems. I've been doing government work for the last 2.5 years. One of my marker moments with my team in this role has been I worked with the state of Illinois and City of Chicago during COVID and during some tough times there, and we had to do some, they needed some staff out there to help them perform some of the, getting the information out there and, telling the public about what COVID is and, what are some of the effects and just making sure people were getting the proper documentation for all of that. So we were able to staff up almost 200 people, right, in a quick turnaround. We were recognized by the governor, by the mayor. It was incredible thing, and all these crazy statistics around how people were vaccinated or at least what COVID was, good or bad. That was something that my team had a part of. So now me being the government solutions executive, I have 9 different states that I oversee. I have a team of recruiters that works hand over fist, and we, in so many words, solve the world's problems. And so, with that, I am in sales, and the reason why I want to say that is, a part of being in sales, you have to bring in the profits, right? And so the reason why I wanted to bring that up is 2 years ago, me climbing up the ladder and what have you, I was recognized as I was number 1 person globally for all of Tech Systems. So that, yeah. Thank you. And so I don't look at that as, oh, I'm selling something to somebody. I look at that as really I'm trying to find the best solution. And I'm very good at my job, and so I'm able to multiply and duplicate that. And that's how we were able to get to that level of success. So there's that piece, and then, that's work. And aside from that, I'm a board member, board of directors with Ellen here for the Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce. I also am the board chair for Junior Achievement Emerging Leaders in Southeastern Michigan. The list goes on, honestly.
And again, I think that it's just highly important to recognize that there's only one adjective that sits, but that doesn't define Chris. Chris is defined by her achievements, the successes that she's had, the work that she has put into her career, to her life. And a credit to the things that the boards that she gets to sit on now shows the abilities that she has. But she is not defined by one thing. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you
absolutely.
so much. So, Ellen, I want to take a little bit to talk about the business that you've built, the people that you have helped create, the lives that you've transformed in creating one of the best coaching companies I believe I've read in Michigan. Is that? And I want to hear from you how you have managed to achieve so much success, what you bring to the table. How is it that you teach so many different types of people? How do you create? How do you create?
Tenacity. First, I want to start by thanking all of the same people that Chris thanked for allowing us to be here, inviting us to be here today. I don't know. How have I done that? I grew up in Detroit. And I grew up in Detroit in a time when the city was changing. I'm a bit older than you, it turns out. And so I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Detroit when it was going through a lot of change, right? And I would come over to this part of town for weekend symphonies. I played the flute, and I was in a local symphony orchestra that met here in the Livonia Westland area. And it was culture shock for me, because I lived in Detroit. I was a minority, and that was my normal. And so from a young age, I feel like I've had this experience of coming to appreciate and value the differences that we have, not because we're trying to use those differences to separate ourselves from each other, but because it's critical to have an appreciation for the path that each of us has walked. Chris's path is different from my path, is different from Derek's path, but there are many similarities among us as well. I think we do a disservice to ourselves and to each other when we try to allow the singular adjective to define our existence and who we are. So I think my success has come from growing up at the feet of community activists in Detroit, and walking a path that not a lot of white people walk, honestly, from a racial diversity perspective. I was slow to come out because I was terrified of disappointing my parents. So even though I grew up surrounded by lots of gay men in Detroit, there weren't a lot of lesbians around. There weren't that many trans people that were visible. And so it took me a long time to accept who I was. And for a long time, I tried to hide that in business because I was afraid that people would judge me by my differences, rather than valuing me for what those differences offered them in terms of a different perspective. And at this stage, I've owned my own business for 19 years. I'm reasonably successful with it. And I work with executive teams, I work with management teams, I work with some of these plant managers. Wow, they're a handful. I mean, talk about a walking path of DEI experience, my Lord. So, I am successful and win these folks over by being tenacious, by being relentless in asking questions and challenging assumptions, and putting it right back to them to say, does your walk match your talk? Are you living your values, or are you just talking about your values? And challenging them to close that gap, be honest about identifying it, and then closing that gap. And I think it's just because I don't know, because I grew up the way I did. I have a mouth on me. And so, it gets me in trouble in some places. I am not everyone's shot of whiskey. But for those that recognize the value of living authentically and engaging in real talk, you're my people. So.
Exactly. I think that one of the things that strikes me is that we are all allowed to be successful when we no longer have to hide. When I no longer have to be worried that someone is going to think differently of me, that means that I can focus myself on my achievements. And I mean, that's all we really want in life, is to achieve things. That's all we want, is to be successful. And you being here today, listening to us talk about ways that we have been successful, hopefully your takeaway is to figure out how you can help others be successful. That the ideology, that the rhetoric that you hear doesn't have to be the rhetoric that you believe, the rhetoric that you speak. You can be your own person. Right?
Yeah, and I just want to say, I have 3 young adult children. I'm part of a blended family with my wife of almost 16 years. And we have an 18, a 19, and a 20-year-old. They all identify under the flag in some way. My eldest is a gay man, my middle child is bisexual, and my youngest is non-binary. That was not on purpose. And contrary to the belief of some of my in-laws, we did not raise them to be gay, but that's just how they walk through the world. And the interesting thing to me is how many of their friends are walking through the world the same way. They are all flying under the flag in some way. They're all openly comfortable with who they are, and thank God for it. right? That's how we're going to make
Because-
change in the world.
Because pride isn't here to bring our agenda to somebody else. Pride is here to remind those who sit in the closet who are scared that it's okay. I wear my queerness out in public so that someone else doesn't feel afraid. And that, in our community, we've only seen it expand and grow. And a classic example, we struggle with that too. There's racial inequality within our thing. There is misunderstandings between that. I am 45 years old. I still don't understand non-binary. That's okay. It's okay not to know. What's not okay is not figuring it out, not taking the time to listen, or just because we don't know, misinterpreting that to mean something that it doesn't.
And then if I could, one thing I would say, one thing that's helped me with my success is the allies and the advocacy for people speaking up for me in rooms that I was not in, and continue to do that, right? And so that's so important because I think, you know, especially when we're talking in terms of like DEI, that is just so important. That's what makes the world go round. And you cannot, somebody that gets to the next level that doesn't look like you doesn't get there without your support, right? And so I think when I started to see my most success is when I felt most comfortable being my true authentic self at work. When I first started, I was wearing the hoop earrings, I had the hair, and I was wearing the girl clothes. That was not me, and everybody could see it 10 miles away, okay?
But what it took was her coworkers coming to her saying, "You don't look like you."
Absolutely.
And saying to her, coming to her and saying, "Be you." We're not just gonna say, "That's okay." We're gonna support you. I want you to be you. And when you are out in the world, that's all you have to do.
And one last point with that is...
Make them all.
Okay, all right. The other point I have with it is, as I started to see that level of success, there were other people that were watching me and saying, "Oh my God, you're my role model. Like, I can't be what I can't see." And that's so true. Like, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I do it for other people as well.
What a great line. I can't be what I can't see.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I want to ask a couple questions, if that's okay. And then honestly, after these two questions that I have, because I'm the host, I get to ask them first. After that, I'm going to bring this out to the floor. So while they're answering these questions, I encourage you to think of some questions yourself, because nothing is scarier than stepping off this stage and no one raising your hand, okay? So what I want to bring up, I'm first going to talk with Chris, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you define equality and equity as the same?
No.
So we don't see equality and equity as the same. In about a minute and a half, why don't you tell me what you believe the difference is between equity, I know, right? Between equity and equality.
Okay. Let me see.
We'll give you 2 minutes.
Oh my God, that's so much.
I know,
Okay.
but that's why you're in the chair.
Yeah, for sure. From an equity standpoint, again, I'm talking about allyship, I'm talking about advocacy, right? Like, think about how you all start your first day of work, right? You start your first day of work, you're giving all the tools and resources that are needed to be successful in the role. You're giving a mentor, maybe somebody that's going to train you. Okay, think about, that's how it should be. That's not how it always is. So that's equality, right? And from an equity standpoint, how it should be, and sometimes how it doesn't always look, is somebody might start, they might not be given the proper tools or resources to be successful because they look a little bit different, or, you know, or how about this, from an equity standpoint, let's think about individuals who go to school and they have, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, right? They have the hundreds of $1,000s in debt, and then there's somebody over here that doesn't have all that debt. They're both at $100,000 in salary, okay? From an equity standpoint, it's not, you're not equitable, and you're not starting at an equal starting point. Does that make sense?
It does.
So it's very, again, going back to my original point, it's very important to have that advocacy, to have that allyship, to help people move further along in their careers and where they're trying to go, so that we can have both.
That's excellent. I think such a wonderful point. So I'm going to give you an equally tough question. How do we, in the community, as a city, create inclusion? And how, because you know I'm right, how often when we say the word inclusion, we actually mean exclusion?
That feels like a trick question.
I know, right? That's why you're in the chair.
Yeah, okay. So, you know what? I'm a big fan of leaning in when our tendency wants us to feel like we want to lean away, right? That goes for any kind of conversation where there's discomfort. Maybe it's between two colleagues who are both white men, have some level of privilege, same level of position in an organization. They just don't like each other very much. Lean into that conversation anyway. Ask hard questions. The same is true with two people who don't have the same life experience, identities, or backgrounds. When we get uncomfortable, this is the coach talking. When we get uncomfortable, we tend to lean away from each other because it's self-preservation. Some of us need a little more time to think. We want to mull it over before we have to engage.
We exclude.
And we exclude. Others, and almost all of us, I would actually say all of us, we lean into assumptions. We start making assumptions about why someone else is showing up the way they're showing up, why they are engaging, why they are not engaging, why they are not comfortable showing up at the city to pay their water bill, why they feel entitled to walk in and pay their water bill before anyone else can, right? All kinds of situations happen, and the thing is that assumptions are so pervasive, we don't even recognize when we're making them. But I'd love to challenge the room. I challenge every room I'm in to think of an example of communication gone poorly between two people that does not involve an assumption at the heart of it.
That's
Because I haven't found one yet.
correct. You know, when we talk about the water bill, one of the things that I champion the most within this city is how welcoming those that work within this city are. The mayor's office, city council, the employees here within the city. And I want the trans person at home watching this on YouTube because she's too scared to come to this on her own, to see all of you in this thing and know that when she wants to come pay her water bill, she's gonna be treated just like I would, just like Mike is, just like Ray is, and just like Lena. So remember that, allies. Allies is what helps create diversity. And exclusion and inclusion can oftentimes run the same path, right? Excellent. Thank you, you two. I think that was such a wonderful thing, right? So I think it's time for a couple of questions. Who's got questions? Oh, Miss Nichols.
I'm usually the first person to ask a question. I have, Chris, to you. I hired in at Ford Motor Company during the affirmative action time. And I had a little help with being a lady and being black. I want to know if you suffer more discrimination for being, you have three things, being a black lady, a black person, being a gay person, or being a female person. And next thing to you, how have you been able to deal with other women who look on you maybe as a little something wrong with you?
Woo!
That's, see, I told you.
Coming
See, that's
with
why
the
you're glad you
question.
came today, aren't you?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
We actually talked a little bit about that with your first question at the table a little bit. That is real, actually. That's something I deal with every day. And I think what people don't realize is, you know, you have to have tough skin. That's why I say advocacy and allyship is so important. I'm thankful to have the best family in the world because they support me in everything that I do. When I came out, it was, they had a lot of questions, but they supported me. And honestly, that is the best thing for an individual such as myself to have, because I also have so many friends that don't have that support at home. And so why I bring that up is, man, the allyship and advocacy is important, because outside of the family and to be able to navigate through these corporate rooms, and, I'm in government. There's a lot of prejudice. There's a lot of opinions in the spaces, in the rooms that I'm in. And during COVID, where we had everybody was virtual, there was a lot of things that were, said and things that I saw that, I just had to push through. Now think about so many people like what I'm talking about right now don't have that support and that strength to be able to push through. That's why the suicide rates are high too. Suicide rates in the LGBT community are really high. I know we don't want to talk about that sad part of it, but that's the sad reality, And so, again, support. I'm thankful to have the best support system, starting with my family, then going to my coworkers. I have the best support system in the world. So that's how I'm able to navigate, honestly, and just be who I am unapologetically all the time.
So as for the female allyship portion of the question, I think that I try to approach it like I approach any other conversation. I try to look at, for me, equity and equality have always been sort of simply defined as equality means everybody's got shoes. Equity means they've got the right shoes. So they fit comfortably, right? So I try to make sure the people that I'm engaging with, particularly other women, because I want to support their success, and often I'm in rooms like plant management teams, there are 1 or 2 women in the room. Try to make sure, first of all, that they've got shoes that fit. And what that means as a metaphor is it means that they know who they can go to for help. I can sometimes help them identify other people they hadn't thought of that might have their back. Or I can help them think about how they're going to navigate a really difficult conversation with the man on the team, the one man on the team that just seems to constantly dismiss them because they are female, right? My wife is a senior quality engineer in automotive. She works for a tier 1 supplier. She's also 5 foot tall and a little tiny thing. I know, right? She got me. She has been in automotive for 30 years. She fights this every single day. And she came up from the floor. She came up through the ranks. And she's constantly questioned about her judgment, about steps that she wants to take because she's female. More than being gay, it's because she's female. And she's been denied opportunities, she's been passed over, all those things, but we keep engaging. That's how we get through it. We speak up for each other, we are allies with each other, and we keep engaging. And we just keep leaning in when we want to lean away and asking more and more questions.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, right? I think, round of applause. And what I take away from both of those conversations for you to think about is support. Support, be the ally. Stand up when you see something, that's not appropriate. Ms. Richards? Oh.
Don't know if you guys have been bullied, but if you have, how did you handle it, and what would you tell the next person how to handle that, being bullied?
Let me see. Oh yeah, I mean, I think when I first cut my hair in the workplace, this is 24, so it's about 11 years ago. This person is no longer with the organization. And it was Pride Month, and I hadn't even really said anything about what I identified as, but you can kind of tell, And so some members on the team decided to put up just a little simple Pride calendar in the lunchroom. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. We're getting progressive around here, all right. And somebody was shouting and said, oh man, he was like, I already hear about Pride everywhere else. We got to bring it to work too, and this and that. And then he looked at me and I said, oh boy, really now, And so, again, I go back to that strength. I go back to the strength and the support that I have. There were people that stood up for me in that moment and was like, yo, we're definitely not doing this here. This is an organization where we welcome all Like, and we're not going to do that. And so me and the individual, we ended up having a very educated conversation. I'm one where I try to see the good in everybody, like whether that's right or wrong, that's just how I am. I give people the benefit of the doubt. And people tend to come to me because I'm even keel when it comes to both sides, right? And I can meet you where you're at. My only respect is that you can also lean in and be intentional and wanting to meet me where I'm at, so that we can both, at least maybe, I can't maybe get you fully to the other side of where I'm at in life, but my hopes is that I can at least shed a little bit of light to make you a better individual and better aware of what's going on in the world. And so that was what I did with that individual. We had a conversation. It lasted over an hour. It was not sunshine and rainbows, but we hugged it out at the end of it, and he respected me moving forward. And guess what? He became one of my biggest allies. So there's positive in that, right? And so that's how I live my life. I live my life like that, and that's how I handled it.
Well, being my own boss for the last 19 years, I don't have a lot of experience with that. But before I started my own business, I was a community organizer. And I worked for a large national network, and I was the executive director of an organization in metropolitan Cleveland. And this was before I came out, although when I did come out, my father was like, "It's about time. I've known since you were a kid." So apparently I was more obvious to other people than I was to myself. But anyway, I was a young, white, female executive director. I was in my late 20s at a time where I was working with this faith-based community organization, and there were a lot of older black pastors, some of whom were from the Deep South. And many of them believed women shouldn't be in the pulpit, let alone running an organization. And I had to win them over in order to run the organization. And so I employed the practice that Chris talked about. I showed up with a lot of humility and a lot of curiosity. I wasn't interested in telling them my story to get them to understand me. I was interested in inviting them to tell me theirs. Because through inviting them to tell me their stories, and this is how I approach work today, I invite other people to tell you their story. If they're clearly hot and bothered about something enough that they're taking it out on you, that is about them. It is not about you. And you invite them to lean into that space and share their story with you, and you will learn a lot about what the motivations are behind their very big feelings that are coming out. My oldest son is going to be a preschool teacher, so I have a lot of conversations that involve, we need to catch a bubble. There's big feelings involved, let's talk about it, right? So that's what's happening. Those bullying comes from people feeling incredibly insecure. It's about them, it's not about you. The moment I recognized that, I was able to just lean in with a lot more empathy and compassion to hear what their stories were, give them space to feel seen and heard, and that makes all the difference, because that's all we want at the end of the day. Everybody wants to be seen and everybody wants to be heard.
Exactly. It's a two-way street. We say this all the time, right? Everybody says, it's a two-way street, but when we say that, we mean it. We need to mean it. When you say the words two-way street, that means you also have to go halfway, and you lean in. That's how we do it. I think we've got time for a few more questions, actually. I'll let you two fight it out. I'll come to you next.
Well, thank you, ladies, too, for being here. I grew up with a brother who was handicapped. He struggled mentally, and he was low functioning. So growing up, we had a lot of stares. A lot of people didn't understand. It was back in the 80s when autism wasn't talked about. So we had a lot of bias. My parents always taught me to be kind and pass no judgment, because you don't know the battle people are facing. So what I would ask, or whoever wants to take it, is what do you say to somebody that might not have grown up in that environment to be kind and to have an open mind and to accept everyone. I think, nowadays people are, and as Derek has said, they're in their own little bubble in some ways, but we have to kind of pop that bubble and include them. So what would you say to someone that maybe don't understand or maybe question or, why are you that way or you don't feel that way? People don't understand in many cases, but what advice or what would you say to someone that maybe don't understand or ask questions? Like, how do you tackle that?
Okay, I'll be short, and then I'm going to pass it to you, too. Okay, so what I would say is I have a lot of these conversations in business, and it being across different states, and, you have political lines, all kind of stuff. And so my advice I give to people is the world is ever evolving, it's ever changing. The workforce nowadays especially is now starting to become more millennial based, which means there's a lot of different views between the baby boomers and the millennials and below, okay? And so if you want to be competitive and you want to keep up in this world, you almost need to treat it like working out, right? Like I'm working out 2-3 times a week now. I'm trying to lose weight, okay? And so in order to lose that weight, you got to be consistent and you got to be repetitive in the gym, and you got to get the weights. You got to get on the treadmill. You got to train your body, right? The same thing is for this. If you want to keep up in today's world, you have to train your mind. And you have to you have to train the way that you think about things. And it's not to say, oh, I'm going to totally be this way or I'm totally going to be this way, but it's to say, okay, I can at least understand, or I at least can try to understand. And so that's what I would say.
I really wish this issue was not as closely tied in my personal life as it is, but here we are. I live in Lapeer. So, you're describing the breakdown of the conversation on a nationwide level. We're having trouble listening to each other and having civil conversation. I think that it's along the same lines of what I've said before, because those things are just universal and they tend to work. During COVID, there was a complete breakdown of communication in my extended family because we just found ourselves on different sides of everything. And, we have found our way back to each other through deciding to choose common ground, through deciding that we love each other more than our differences in fill in the blank, right? Every facet of life and expression. And so we have chosen to make a decision that when we are together, we choose to focus on the things that bring us together, the things that we share, the things that we love each other for, and we love each other unconditionally. And the rest of it, there are some things we can't discuss anymore because we're just too far apart in being able to have civil conversation. So I think that leaning in with compassion, again, recognizing that some of the things that are causing these divisions are not necessarily about you, but they're just about something with the other person feeling not seen, not heard, not understood. Giving space to have those really hard, really uncomfortable conversations where we simply extend the invitation to share your viewpoint, to share your experience, but I also would like to share mine. And that means I'm expecting the same level of respect from you, that you're going to hear me coming from a different perspective, and we're going to agree that at the end of the conversation, we can still rely on the common ground to carry us through.
Exactly. And if I could add just one point to that thing, I think we also need to remember not to judge those who are judging us. So quickly someone's going to come with us without this information, and our instant, we come from a place of judgment, a place of up here. Oh, how can you not understand what I am going through? How dare... We got to remember to stop that first. Sometimes, a friend of mine I work in food, right? And one of my server coworkers one time came up to me and said, you need to just check yourself before you leave the server station. And it was an apt thing in life. You need to check yourself. You need to remind yourself, what place am I at? What thoughts am I thinking? What judgment am I perceiving to this person? Because, again, we cannot have an honest conversation. We can't find common grounds together if we judge each other. All right, I think we have time for a couple questions. I'm going to go to her back here, and then I will come back up.
While you're walking to get the question, I just want to add this one thought. We can't control anyone else's words or actions or behavior. We can only control our own. So we've got to focus on how we show up and let the rest of it, they have to handle it themselves.
So thank you both for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm curious, outside you've mentioned work a lot and family a lot. Kind of a two-part question. What has made the biggest difference for you in feeling more equitable and more comfortable in your communities and your leisure time, or if you're when you're at the gym? And what do you think is missing? Like, what would make the biggest difference for you to feel more comfortable? And Derek, feel free to answer this one as well.
That's a good question. Right? More things like this, more conversations, more involvement with the community, more, and I think, Ellen and I both sit on the board of directors for the Detroit Regional LGBT Chamber of Commerce, so we're out there doing the work. We just had a Pride Gala this past Friday where we were highlighting small businesses and different organizations that are LGBT owned and aspiring to be entrepreneurs, and we had almost 1,000 people there, right? And it's just, not all of those individuals that were there were LGBT identifying. There were a lot of allies too. And a lot of, what I was most proud with this event, there was a lot of CEOs, VPs, different people from the city of Detroit that were representing and saying, hey, we stand with you all. Like, we want to be with you all. And that is empowering to hear, especially when you're looking for that type of support, whether it's work, home, and what you just said, the community, like, that's even more empowering to have it in a place in which you live. Think about being in a community where, and I think, Derek and we're talking about it earlier, is like, think about living in a community where you literally are scared to walk outside because you don't know what people are going to say to you one minute or the next, or what kind of judgment is going to get passed on. And what I would say and what I would encourage to the people that are on the other side of that is, that's somebody's brother, mother, sister, aunt, kid. Like, you wouldn't want your kid, brother, sister, aunt, so on and so forth, to be treated that way. So why do we do that? So it's just, again, I could go on and on, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I feel like it coincides with me getting older, because initially my initial gut reaction to your question was, well, age, wisdom, and experience, right? Just getting more and more comfortable in my own skin as I get older. Something about passing 50 was like, yeah, okay, bring it. But I also recognize the way in which my aging process has coincided with a pretty significant evolution in the world. So with the dawn of technology, which my children look at me and they're like, what, you didn't have a cell phone growing up? Nope. Don't leave out Gen X. We matter
right? That's
too.
how I feel of it. So often, we're always the lost generation.
We did drink from garden hoses.
Well,
anyway,
no one knew where we were because we didn't have any internet, right?
Exactly. That's right. We have an identity crisis. Anyway, I digress. My point is, social media, the access of technology, has opened up the world in a way that before we could only get through books, and that was if you were lucky enough to have a librarian who could point you in the right direction, right? So now we've got technology in our pockets that allows us to find community everywhere, regardless of how you identify. You can find community if you go looking for it. And I think that seeing other people, hearing after the fact the way in which my family was defended in a room and I didn't even realize we were on trial, right? That has happened to my family. My children were attacked. We didn't even know about it because the teachers stood up for us, stood up for my kids. And so just experiences like that of knowing that there are good people who are interested in having each other's backs, even if they don't share the same identity, they just recognize it as common decency to treat one another with respect, and then finding community and leaning on other people to say, God, that really sucked. That was a really difficult experience or really difficult day, and knowing that people have your back. And you can always go to them to say, I'm struggling, and I need you to help me remember who I am. That's what it's about.
Exactly. And to answer your question in regards to that, I have it. I have a community that welcomes me. I have a community that is here to support us. When we had situations that I'm sure parts of the city are very well part of, you came to the aid. So to ask what I need in order to feel that way, nothing, because I have all of you. And those in our city, they have you. What I want you to do is to remember that you are your own person, your own flag, your own ideal. But as a councilwoman said before, there's enough pie for everyone. You don't have to remove your flag just to support me. I don't have to remove your flag to support you. I can support you because why? We're a community. This is our home. This is our city. We want others outside of this city to see us for who we are, not the misconceptions, the perceptions, the things that people joke about, the mall. We're more than the mall. Am I right? So I want to say again it a little bit. I'm going to bring the council president up to speak to do some closing remarks. But before I go tonight, I want to say I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to those of you who work within the city, who took time out of your day to come in here. I'm thankful for the councils that are here, all of you. This is the most council members I have ever seen at a Lunch and Learn, so that on its own is a plus. I appreciate the mayor and the mayor's office for the support. I appreciate Parks and Rec for for knowing that this is the DEI Commission was my most important commission this month. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for the standing up for those in my community, for being willing to stand apart from others within our community to say, I am here for you. Mm-hmm. And what I would like you to do is to take that home. And I would like you to see that so that when you do see something or you hear a comment, you will feel empowered enough to say, that's not right. We are not that way. We are not the mall. So with that, Mike, please come up and take that.
Well, thank you, Derek. I just want to thank both of you, first off, for a phenomenal panel and a very insightful conversation that I think too often we don't have. And this isn't just a conversation for Pride Month. This is a conversation for every day in every month. And when we say Happy Pride to folks in the LGBTQIA community, we say it to more than just people who are LGBTQIA. Yes, we say Happy Pride to one another because we are lesbian or gay or bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, asexual, pansexual. But we say it to our allies and our friends who are working with us too, because we want to bring them into this fight. We want them to understand that our fight is also their fight and their struggle. But more than just saying Happy Pride, we say so much more, because it's, as Derek said to start this conversation off, we are not siloed as LGBTQIA individuals. We say Ramadan Kareem because we fight for our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we know that there are people who are Muslim and LGBTQIA. We say Happy Hanukkah or Merry Christmas, or Happy Holidays if you celebrate nothing at all. We say Happy Labor Day for the working class individuals who are LGBTQIA or otherwise, because their struggle for income inequality, their struggle for a good job with great benefits is our struggle. We say Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to our Indigenous brothers and sisters, many of whom may identify as LGBTQ themselves, many of whom may not. We say Happy Independence Day and 4th of July because we know that the true spirit of America includes equal and equitable rights and protections for all of us, and that all men, women, non-binary people are created equal, and that we know that the promise of America, well, it has not always been granted to everybody. Well, we know there has been a big struggle and a hell of a lot of work still to do, that the promise of America should apply to everyone. We say Happy Mother's Day and Happy Father's Day and Happy Birthday because we know that people in the LGBTQIA community and outside are mothers and fathers. They are brothers and sisters. They are friends and family. And I think it's so important, as Derek mentioned, to remember that we not silo ourselves and not allow ourselves to be siloed. That there is so much more to all of us than just being gay or lesbian or bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning. That we have different hobbies and interests and things that we really care about, passions that we share, and that we are allowed to express those passions to our fullest. You know, the 4 people on this stage in some way or another all identify as LGBTQIA, but we couldn't be different from one another. I bet you if I asked Ellen, or if I asked Derek, or if I asked Christina what type of music you like, we'd probably have the exact same taste or the exact opposite taste when it comes to music or movies or things that we like. And that's so important to remember, to not only respect our differences, but value them and understand that these things that we identify as LGBTQIA are not the only things that we identify as. And these differences in all walks and ways of life are what really define us as human beings and what really make us as great as individuals. Before I get to the kind of the closing salutations and thank yous, which I will get into a minute, I want to read a quote from the late, great Harvey Milk. And it takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. And it takes no survey to remove repression. And those of you who know the story of Harvey Milk know that he was tragically killed and murdered for the cause that he fought for the work that he did as an advocate, as a member of the San Francisco legislative body, as I am here in Westland. And the thing about Harvey Milk and why he leaves such an impression onto me is that as an elected official, I have more than just words that I'm capable of. I have actions. Legislative action as a member of your city council here in the Westland community. Action that I can take to make a real difference, not just in the lives of LGBTQIA individuals, but in the lives of every Westland resident. And that it is our creed as elected officials to improve the quality of life of everyone in our community, to lift everyone from any community, marginalized or otherwise, to lift them up, to make sure that we have not only equality, but equity, to make sure that we provide for folks' basic needs. And I'm not going to get too political here because we are at a city event and function, but I would remind people as we come up on the 10th anniversary of Obergefell v. Hodges that we have, that's actually next year, we have a very important election coming up this year. And I would encourage everyone to vote, no matter what side of the aisle you are on or who you choose to vote for. Vote to stand up for what you believe is right, to stand up for your values, to stand up for the people in a community that you care about and you love about. Vote not just for Obergefell v. Hodges. Vote for every community and everyone's rights who are being held back and repressed, for the voting rights that have been rolled back, for civil rights that have been rolled back. When we look at rulings like Roe v. Wade, when we look at loving and interracial marriage, when we look at Griswold and contraception, whatever the issue that is that motivates you and drives you to come to the polls, vote and participate in this process. And the reason to vote is because there are a heck of a lot of people that came before each and every one of us who struggled for just the most basic fundamental rights, who struggled for the right to come out and be openly accepted, who struggled for the right to live their life as they see fit and marry who they see love. There is a fight that is so much bigger than each one of us as individuals, that really includes all of us as a collective. So I would encourage everybody, given that we have an election this year, to go out and vote and to encourage everyone you know in your inner circle to go out and vote. And finally, before I get to the salutations here, I would encourage everybody to remember what Derek said, at the beginning and kind of what has been the theme here, that Pascal laid out, which is common grounds. That being LGBTQIA is not what defines us. It's everything about ourselves, everything about our neighbors, everything about the people that we interact with each and every day in our community. Not just in our city here in Westland, but the communities that we involve ourselves in. As a recruiter for a living, and I know you have that HR background too. HR is a part of a community that we're in. As a small business owner, being a business owner is a part of the community that you're in. Working in the restaurant industry, being members of the chamber, these are all communities that we are involved in. So don't allow ourselves to be defined by only one thing. Allow ourselves to be defined by all the things that make us up, all the things that make us great, and most of all, how we treat other people when we're out there in the world. So thank you all for coming out. I want to thank every member of the Westland community and beyond who joined us here for today's Lunch and Learn. I want to thank our DEI board, Derek, Pascal, Ize, our Director of DEI, Nicole. I want to thank Jackie from Parks and Rec, Kyle from Parks and Rec, for helping put on this event, for the mayor for making this a first of its kind event, for our previous mayors, Bill Wild, Mayor Bill Wild, who put together the DEI Board and Commission, and for Mayor Londo, who helped to bring the initial Pride resolution back in 2021 to the Westland City Council and to fly that flag out there for the first time in 2021. I want to thank my colleagues on the City Council, most notably my Council President Pro Tem, who was an ally with me in bringing this resolution together. Thank her for getting it on the agenda. My colleague, Councilwoman Bauman, who came here today, and all of my colleagues who adopted this. I want to thank our guests, Ellen and Christina, and our terrific moderator, Derek. And again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us not only here today, but joining us in this fight before today and well beyond today. Without each and every one of you, there would be no fight and no way to solve these problems and these challenges that we all face in this world. And the kindness, the compassion, the struggle, the tenacity that you all show each and every day in your lives is greatly appreciated and valued, and is why we're here and why we can continue to do the work we do and make the progress that we've made. So thank you all humbly and kindly for coming out. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to the mayor and the administration, my colleagues on council, and to everyone for making this a huge success for our first Lunch and Learn. Thank you.